alone, I'll be waiting.
To the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome, K-Man, to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and welcome here to Straight Talk. And of course, I have to keep telling you, just keeps getting better every single day. How are you, Mr. Harris?
I am very well, sir. Perhaps not as good as you. You've had an extremely busy day today.
Well, it's because my friend taught me how to operate, what is it, that Keurig machine? I just had ginger and lemon. I don't know, it's a very exciting, the whole world has changed now.
The whole world just opened up.
You've introduced this to me.
Now you can have as many coffees and hot chocolates as you like and keep you going throughout the day.
So my first time to come in here is just open up the cabinets. I'm looking at about 12 different things and going, oh, which one will I have today?
Yes.
I didn't want to have hot chocolate, so I said, let me go for the ginger and lemon. Not too shabby.
Very good. You had some tea today, did you?
Absolutely. A little cup of tea just to get it, just to hit the spot.
Fantastic.
Spot on.
Well, today is going to be another exciting day here on Straight Talk. More opportunities to talk with the experts and have any questions or shortcomings you may have answered by the experts themselves. Ellio, tell us and our listening audience who our guest is for this evening.
Well, I'm going to tell you that and just put a bit of a Band-Aid on first to say, hey, just so you know, 30 April 2025 is quickly approaching.
Yes.
And we will have other people coming in here as well to chat about this whole referendum issue.
Okay.
2 or 3 issues, right? But that'll be something for you to discuss another day.
All right. Look forward to it.
But I definitely want to encourage the audience to listen up. If you're just tuning in, make sure and get your friends to listen up as well. We have someone totally awesome here up in the studio if you'd like to join into the conversation, because we are all about dialogue, not monologue. The number to call here up in the studio is 745-2626. Again, that's 745-2626. And, of course, my colleague, I'm sure, will give you the WhatsApp number if you want to send some text or voice messages.
Absolutely. Our version of the 1-800 toll-free number is our WhatsApp line by dialing 928-2562. You can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message, both of which will either be read or played live on air. And as my colleague just stated, we encourage the dialogue. We encourage particularly those persons who might be on the fence on this issue of Cruz birthing, to please be a part of the conversation. Don't be shy, either on the phone line, 745-2626, or the WhatsApp number. We are also broadcasting to you, of course, live on your radio dial at Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting on YouTube, Instagram, and on Facebook, compliments of the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page. So a couple of ways in which you can access us, whichever is comfortable and works for you. The most important thing for us is that this information, this valuable information, is getting where it needs to be, your ears.
All righty. Well, I once heard a prosecutor say that how would he put it? If the turtle comes from the river bottom and tells you that it's cold, then it's cold. And of course, I say that to say we have in the studio with us a gentleman that has a significant level of experience, none other than Mr. Giora Israel. Welcome to the studio, sir.
Hello.
Absolutely. Sound good to hear you. And this gentleman, I can tell you that he has a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. It's as long as my leg, arguably. So I really want to summarize things by saying that he's been in the tourism industry. That includes hotel business as well as cruise for over 50 years. And also he has a lot of experience in relation to the SEAM industry, specifically here in the Caribbean, lived in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I think he had that good period of time in Bahamas as well. Lots of knowledge, and we want to definitely pick his brain, to use that expression, as it relates to cruise tourism today.
Sure. Sounds good.
And with that, I mean, unless you have something to interject, Austin.
No, I
I'll
just want to
jump right
say
in.
welcome, and maybe a good place to start whilst you gave that excellent bio is Giora, welcome. Tell
Thank
us and our listening audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Delighted to be here. So I'm not a Caribbean person.
Mhm.
No,
And yet,
I thought your tan was a dead giveaway.
I know.
You look like a local.
I am local. But I fell in love, so I consider myself a little bit an adopted Caribbean person.
Right.
There you go.
I lived in the Virgin Islands. My daughter was born there. I lived in the Bahamas and spent many years in the Caribbean living here.
Mhm. Okay.
And I've built 2 tourist attractions, one in St. Thomas, one in Nassau, called Coral World. And having done that after a 12-year experience in the hotel industry beforehand, and the important customers for these businesses were the cruise lines.
Yes.
And being a hotelier, I looked at them and I said, we have floating hotels here.
Mhm.
And I was intrigued and ultimately became an advisor to the cruise lines about the Caribbean. And ultimately, I was hired by Carnival.
Mhm.
And I served 32 years in Carnival, mainly dealing with the international expansion of the company around the world. Initially, so acquiring cruise company. Carnival only created one brand, and all the other brands that Carnival acquired over the years, we acquired. We didn't, Carnival only created the Carnival brand.
Right.
And I was involved in acquisition of some of these cruise brands.
Wow.
And in the last 24, 25 years, I dealt mainly with the expansion of Carnival as in destinations.
Okay.
We just ran out of destinations to go to, as I still say we, and forgive me, I retired from Carnival 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, and I still say we.
That's all right. Old habits die hard.
Yeah. So I needed to find a destination that the cruise ships of tomorrow will go to.
Yeah.
Some of these projects were in Europe, in Spain, 3 different projects in Spain, in Dubai, the largest cruise terminal in the Eastern Hemisphere, developed in collaboration with the government of United Arab Emirates.
Mhm.
In Sasebo, Japan, in Australia, in Brisbane, Australia, and obviously in my beloved Caribbean, I did a lot of projects in the Caribbean,
Right.
from San Martin and St. Thomas, San Juan and Dominican Republic, Grand Turk and Amber Cove in
Okay.
the DR, and so on. And this ability to have a broader perspective of the world of cruising and tourism made it possible for me to create these destinations for the cruise line, for the company I worked for.
Mhm.
But I did a lot of joint ventures with government, private and public enterprises. Also in the U.S., I built several ports. I opened ports like Galveston, New Orleans, Jacksonville for the first time for the cruise business. Built the only privately funded and operated port on the West Coast United States in Long Beach, and on and on and on and on.
Okay.
All right, totally awesome. Again, thank you again, Mr. Giora, for coming here in the studio. I'm going to take the approach and walk through this, my colleague and I. I think he mentioned earlier on, we were both chatting just off the air, that I think neither one of us have had the pleasure yet to get on a cruise ship. I think that arms me and puts me in a good position. I believe that what we need to address today, in as short a time as we have, is all of those persons out there, particularly those who are undecided with legitimate concerns. And I'm going to take that position from an external view as myself, who drove by the cruise ships, never been on one, and start asking the questions accordingly so that you can give the answers. So in externality, I drove by, I would see 5 and 6 cruise ships sitting in the middle of Georgetown. Many persons have seen that, and we saw the tender boats running up and down, back and forth, delivering the tourists. We've seen that for years. So I guess my first question would be, now we're hearing the changes of the possibility. We have a referendum coming up saying, do we need cruise berthing facilities? These persons are hearing, you need to build cruise piers, or we're going to be losing the cruise ships. We're going to be seeing cruise tourism decline. How do you respond to the persons who have been seeing these 5 and 6 ships in the harbor, dropping anchors for years, tenders, happily and jolly bringing tourists on board. How do you answer them as to, is it a legitimate concern that we need to build piers in the Cayman Islands?
Yeah. I think the cruise lines that have come over the decades, many decades, to Grand Cayman came here because they, as cruise company and their customers, loved Grand Cayman. Grand Cayman sat at the right place in the western itinerary between Cozumel and Jamaica, and it was always doing very, very well. And there's nothing wrong about operating in Grand Cayman without a pier, because the cruise line have tended here for decades. Something happened. And what happened that one of the large cruise line, Royal Caribbean, in 2008, decided to build a very big ship that carries a minimum of 5,000 people. It goes up to 6,000 people. And at that time, Royal Caribbean, the only one with these big ships, made a determination based on their experience with 4,000 and 3,000 that they will not be able to tender that class of ship. By the way, nothing to do with Grand Cayman, but will not be able to operate this ship in any tender ports. So, and there are many tender ports around the world. And out of the 1,100 ports cruise lines go to around the world, there are probably maybe 100, maybe 200, I don't even know, ports that operate with tenders. So there's nothing wrong with tenders. So that decision was made in 2008 that they will not be able to do so because it will take too much time to take such a big amount of people off and on the ships. And we knew at that time that Royal Caribbean needed to solve the problem for themselves, because companies like Carnival, Norwegian, MSC, and others, which are there are really 5 big companies. All the other 4 did not think that they will have these big ships, but nevertheless, we encourage Royal Caribbean to seek a berthing facility here. Nothing happened. In 2007, we applied jointly. Carnival and Royal Caribbean applied jointly to government to say, if you want to see these big ships, we need a pier. Unfortunately, nothing has happened then. It was tried again in 2017, 18, one more time. It didn't happen. And the issue was that it seems that people of Grand Cayman understood it intellectually that these big ships are not coming. But, if there's one ship like this, there are many others. And then the second ship came, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. We are now in a situation that these big ships, which were not the mainstream, Carnival looked at it, do we need such big ships? NCL said, we'll never do that. MSC said, no. The reality today is that 50% of the ship in capacity that are being built are those 5,000 plus ships. So there are many ships at this size already in operation and many coming. 50% of all the ships under construction in volume of lower berth are these 5,000 ships. And as we have seen exponentially so in the last 2.5 years post COVID, Carnival now has 3 ships operating here. Mm-hmm. And MSC has the first one coming this week, inaugurated. Mm-hmm. Royal Caribbean got another bigger ship that carries 7,500 passengers. So we are seeing a slow transfer of all the people from 3,000 and 4,000 passenger ships to 6,000 passenger ships, right. 5,000, 6,000, and 7,000 passenger ships. And that's where we are, that we're seeing a slow decline of the business here in this region, where we have what we call the milk runs out of Galveston, Miami, Port Everglades, Port Canaveral. All these big brands are operating with these large ships. Mm. And because we cannot tender here, the cruise line cannot tender here with the big ships, they're developing other itineraries.
Right. I want to pick up on 2 points. The first, of course, you just mentioned about the number of cruise lines that are, in fact, building newer and bigger ships. You talked about Carnival having 3, I think it's Icon-class ships. I understand there are plans to build a 4th one that's scheduled to be delivered in 2027, with options for a 5th and 6th Icon-class in the works, probably released by 2030. Norwegian is building 4 of its biggest ships, planned for delivery between 2030 and 2036. An additional 7 cruise lines, all of the huge variety, are also in the works. So that makes the number to 14. Yes. An interesting fact is that all 14 of those larger class cruise ships are designated for the Western Caribbean, so our part of the world. Is that right?
Well, the Caribbean.
The Caribbean, yeah.
And
so Western or Eastern.
Western or Eastern, and there are many companies that are doing what we call butterfly, 1 week Eastern, 1 week Western.
Okay. Now, the second question is, it's been said that bigger ships cannot tender. And I wonder, is this because of a cruise ship design exclusion, i.e. because they're bigger, they can't tender? Or is it more about the efficiency of disembarking that many passengers within a timeline that they have time to get off the ship and then get back on the ship, but still have a decent cruise passenger experience in the destination?
As people in Grand Cayman can observe, today a 4,000 passenger ship will take 2.5 hours to 3 hours to disembark the whole ship. So if you think about double that amount,
right,
and the ships are only eight hours in port, it reduces the amount of time that the people can be in the port to very, very little, if at all.
Yes.
But the other consideration is that it's a huge stress on the consumers, on our guests. We're living in a world where people, either with disability, elderly people in wheelchairs, these numbers have exponentially grown. Our population is growing. For example, I'm growing older.
You don't
I still don't use a wheelchair, but people who have disabilities, people who are older, we having on some ships 100, 150 people in wheelchairs,
yes,
strollers with babies and children. So it makes this operation very, very difficult. It also stresses the crew. Mm-hmm. Once the ship comes alongside, you open the doors and they just go out.
Right. So
it's, and when we say over 5,000 people, it's important to say 5,000 lower berth capacity, which is 100% capacity of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
But the ships are operating at 120 to 130% capacity.
Okay.
So that's why we say it's a threshold of 5,000, but these ships come almost all of them with 6,600 passengers.
Right.
It's just not practical. And by the way, it's nothing to do with Grand Cayman.
Mm-hmm.
None of these ships that are operating today are or will operate on a tender port.
So speaking for the undecided, what you're saying then is, in essence, you're going to continue to see these larger size ships and the numbers are going to continue to decrease. A question and or concern for those persons would be, how low are those numbers going to go? Is it still going to be a case that we can still stay in the cruise business regardless of whether we can take the larger ships or not?
Look, if today you have a ship of 4,000 people that comes 52 weeks a year, okay, so 50 times 4, it's 200,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a ship doing it 52 times, once a week, and this ship pulls out because the ship is retired and a new bigger ship comes in, you lose 200,000 people from a switch of one ship. So it can be very dramatic.
Sure.
Now, there are not many ships that are here on 52 weeks, but there are many ships on 22 weeks. So they're doing every second week, or they're doing half a year.
Mm-hmm.
A very dramatic outcome of this, that the biggest ships belong to those brands that are operating year-round. So Royal Caribbean, MSC, Carnival, and NCL, they are year-round operation. And what will happen in, I would say by 2030, the latest, you may not have ships in the summer, because those who own the smaller ships only come in the winter,
mm-hmm,
like Princess and Holland and Celebrity. So you will see two things happening: less and less ships in the summer, and a total reduction in number of those ships.
I want to provide some numbers to that conversation. These numbers come directly from the Port Authority website, and the estimates come from a website called tourismanalytics.com. It said Cayman Islands cruise ship visits have declined sharply since 2022, shortly after it reopened following the COVID pandemic. In 2022, the Cayman Islands hosted 746,000 cruise ship visitors that year, half of the 1.4 million visitors that sailed into the destination in previous years. 2024, last year, cruise arrivals were 60% in decline, below the 1.84 million passengers who visited in 2019. And 2025 cruise ship arrivals are expected to end the year with a further decline, with as much as 86% in decline. So the cruise lines have been warning for years that in the absence of infrastructure upgrades, and obviously pointing in the direction of cruise peers, that less and less ships will start to call on, or will stop calling on the Cayman Islands. Nobody believed it. But now the statistics, the numbers are bearing those warnings out.
Yes and no.
Okay? Why no?
Okay, why no? Because there's another element that is impacting the decline, that is impacting other destinations that do have berthing facilities,
Okay.
whether for 5,000 or less. And that issue that in 2018, the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, it's a United Nations agency with 188 country members, decided that in order to lower the greenhouse gas emissions, ships will have to be subject to very stringent regulation as to emissions. That led to a regulation that gives a greenhouse gas emission standard for every ship on every trip. It was geared to the international maritime world, where there are over 400,000 vessels. And all these vessels, except for 400, which are the cruise lines, are going point to point. They're
Right.
carrying containers from Shanghai with television to Long Beach, California. So they're going from point A to point B. So you can measure how much greenhouse gas they're emitting on a certain trip. And the owner of that ship will now go slower or use better or more environmentally friendly fuels and will reach that standard. The problem with us as cruise lines, we are not going anywhere. We're leaving Miami and going to Nassau. We don't shut down our engines because the hotel operation keeps on running. So we're going slowly. Then we stay in port for many hours for the people to get off. And then we're going to Ocho Rios and then Grand Cayman, and then we go back. So we are burning a lot of fuel, and we're actually going to nowhere. And the penalties on the cruise line were astronomical.
Right.
It came into effect in 2024, actually coming into effect in January 1st, 2025. So what the cruise line had to do two things: to create more shorter itineraries. And that means, indeed, some of these itineraries cannot reach Grand Cayman or Ocho Rios or Roatan. And that's why we have a big concentration of ships in the northern part of the Bahamas. And there's a big activity there. And that is true and impacting all ports that are on the 7-day distance rotation of the ships, which are south of Hispaniola Island or south of Cuba. So that's the other reason that you have the decline. So these 86% decline, I don't want to attribute them all to the big ships because some of them are just coming on.
Right. But to your point, though, because of these new emissions regulations, which are global, it also, in my mind, defeats the argument that the opponents say, well, we don't need the big ships. We really want to cater to the smaller ships, the more personalized service. But the smaller ships are the older ships, and they're going the way of the dodo, away.
And so the reduction in business here, I would say, if you look at these percentage reduction, half of it comes from the slowly increased number of big ships and some smaller ships that could tender that are staying up in the Great Bahama Bank.
Right.
The advantage, the new regulation has changed recently, that a company like Royal Caribbean, who has 24 ships, they can pull together the emissions from all 24. That allowed now the cruise line to have some of their ships on short itineraries and very slow speeds, and keep on offering ships to go on further away destinations like the down island, the Southern Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean, and here the Western Caribbean area south of Cuba. because we have ships operating efficiently in one part of the region, we can still send ships to the other. That becomes then a problem if many of these ships that do the 7 days and are the big ships, they won't be able to come here.
Right. No, indeed.
So I know it's a little complicated, but we need to be accurate with the facts.
Sure.
But as time passes and a big ship like this is added to the fleet of these 4 companies every 90 days, it's kind of not feeding the horse every day and giving the horse a cup less of food every day, and he's still looking good.
Right.
But after a while, we come one morning and maybe the horse won't be there anymore.
No, absolutely. And again, as I said before, the cruise lines have been warning of this eventuality for years.
Yes.
And, taking the ostrich approach, putting your head in the sand and hoping it all goes away, is not the answer.
Yeah. The reality is that by 2030, a big chunk of what Grand Cayman has today, those ships will be flipped into ships that are 6,000 passengers.
Wow.
That's the reality. And some of the other ships, for example, on Tuesday, there was a ship here called the Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
That ship is beyond its life expectancy. Ships usually live for 30 years.
Okay.
So we kept some smaller ships, for example, for the port of Tampa, which can only accommodate small ships as a home port because they have a bridge. But sooner or later, ships will not leave from Tampa anymore because we won't have enough small ships to leave from that port.
Indeed. We are chatting in studios with Mr. Giora Israel, global cruise expert, and engaging on the topic of cruise berthing, cruise declines, and what are some of the consequences for interest here in the Cayman Islands. We have to pause, take a short commercial break, but there'll be more Straight Talk still to come on Bobo 103.1.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery
A
operation.
race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Neil Nunes with the BBC News. Donald Trump has defended the tariffs he's slapped on U.S. imports from around the world, despite a global stock market sell-off. Wall Street has suffered its worst day since the early months of the COVID pandemic. The Dow Jones fell by nearly 4%. We get more from Mark Ashdown.
So many big American players manufacture goods abroad, so these wide-ranging tariffs will push costs up. Amazon, Apple, Dell, HP and Nike were among those to see billions wiped off their value. The falls in New York followed losses across global markets. Japan's main index slid nearly 3%, and European indices followed with sharp declines. The FTSE 100 might be seen to have got off lightly, with a mere 1.6% fall.
The World Trade Organization has revised its forecast for global economic growth sharply downwards in the light of the new U.S. tariffs. In contrast to its previous forecast of 3% growth for the world economy this year, the agency now expects a contraction of 1%. Jonathan Josephs has the details.
The Director General, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, says the tariffs will have substantial implications for global trade and economic growth prospects. She added she was deeply concerned about escalation and retaliatory measures, which have already started, making things even worse. Some of President Trump's tariffs are already being challenged at the WTO, but the Geneva-based body risks being sidelined if it can't find a way to help its members, including the US, to settle their differences.
Lesotho says it'll send a government delegation to the United States to plead its case after Washington imposed 50% tariffs on its imports. Thousands of people in Lesotho are employed making clothes for the U.S. market under a tax-free initiative set up more than 2 decades ago. Here's Will Ross.
The owner of a clothing factory in the capital of Lesotho, Maseru, said waking up to news of the 50% tariff had been devastating for the country, but said he'd look for markets in Africa and Europe. Across Africa, tens of thousands of workers produce clothing for the US under a tax-free initiative known as AGOA. It was partly set up to help countries trade their way out of poverty. Now Lesotho's government is warning of job losses. Botswana faces a 38% tariff on its exports because Donald Trump wants to get rid of a trade deficit. But that won't be easy. Botswana has diamonds.
Gaza's Hamas-run civil defense agency says an Israeli airstrike on a school sheltering displaced people east of Gaza City has killed at least 31 people, some of them children. Israel says it had targeted a Hamas command center. Gaza's health ministry says around 100 people have been killed in the last day. World News from the BBC. The Pentagon says it'll investigate the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over his use of a messaging app to discuss airstrikes on Yemen. Mr. Hegseth has been at the center of a scandal over the accidental leak of group chat to discuss military operations. Our North America correspondent Jake Kwan has more.
The group chat contained airstrike timings and types of fighter jets, as well as emojis. A well-known U.S. journalist was accidentally invited into the group chat, along with Mr. Hegseth and other top officials, including the vice president. While officials denied that the chat contained any secrets, the published log shows them discussing military details ahead of the airstrikes. The Pentagon said its probe would investigate whether Mr. Hegseth and other defense officials complied with the rules in using the messaging app for official business.
The U.S. Senate has confirmed the television personality Dr. Mehmet Oz as the head of the agency that oversees government health insurance programs. The former heart surgeon had never held public office before. The department he'll lead, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, has an annual budget of more than $2.5 trillion. The international broadcaster Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, says the satellite service it uses to broadcast TV news programs to Russia has been switched off by the U.S. government. The organization's budget was cut by Donald Trump, who's fostering warmer relations with President Putin. An indigenous rights group has warned that social media influencers pose a new and growing threat to uncontacted tribes. Survival International highlighted the recent arrest of an American tourist who had traveled to a restricted Indian Ocean island in an apparent attempt to contact the Sentinelese people. The charity said the man had endangered his own life as well as those of the inhabitants. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, amen, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcast live over Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook as we continue our conversation this evening with global cruise expert Mr. Giora Israel, giving us the facts on cruise lines, the plans that are coming down the pipeline for bigger cruise ships, answering the question, why don't they tender? What are some of the challenges? And more importantly, what can we expect from these future declines in cruise tourism and how that will impact interest here in the Cayman Islands? The phone lines are open. 745-2626 is the number, as my colleague, who also is the executive program manager for ACT, always says. We, unlike other platforms, encourage feedback, dialogue, conversation on this question. And ideally, we are targeting persons who are either on the fence or undecided on the question of should we move forward with cruise berthing in the Cayman Islands, one of 3 referendum questions which will be asked on the April 30th general election. So we're trying to help, and by all means, if you have a question, don't be afraid. Call up. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, if it's a genuine question, we'd like to hear from you. So just very quickly to recap and then to continue our discussion. So what we're understanding on behalf of those persons who are legitimately, genuinely undecided is that there is this transition that is taking place from smaller to larger ships. And as a result of that, the Cayman Islands can expect to experience declines. And we're already seeing that. In addition to that, the IMO, with the regulations in relation to fuel and exhaust, etc., whether intended or not, is having a significant impact on the cruise industry. That is also causing a decline. So my questions would be next, considering that that's the ship side of it, what do you anticipate that these declines will have on the various attractions, which is also something that the cruise lines require in order to come to the country? What impact can you see that having on businesses and the attractions on the Cayman Islands?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, and we have seen it in other circumstances. The cruise line, when they look at the destination, does it fit in an itinerary? Does it have good facilities? Is it a destination in high demand and great quality and reputation? And will the people have something to do there? And I didn't say the cruise line selling excursions, but will the people will have something to do there, whether they buy the excursions from the cruise line or they do their own arrangement or they just grab a taxi or buy the tour when they get off the ship. Whereas the cruise line like to sell tours to its passengers, and it's a revenue source for the cruise line. What is more important, that they have something to do, that they enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So when cruise lines when one ship arrives with 4,000 people, and 1,000 people will buy a tour from the cruise line and another 1,000 will do it on their own, you need a really good infrastructure of boats and cars and buses and taxis and vans and employees to accommodate that. They're coming in bulk.
Right.
So a lot of private enterprise, a lot of private business people in the ports are investing substantial amount of money in equipment, in training. They keep these employees year-round or at least seasonally. So if suddenly we'll have a month with no ships, what will these people do with their equipment? What will they do with their employees? And so on. So we need a critical mass of these products for these people that come in big bulks. Suddenly 4,000. And, today I think there were 12,000 people here on 3 ships. So, there's a big infrastructure by private enterprise, larger companies, smaller companies, to entertain and to support those people, whether they buy a tour from the cruise line or whether they buy it on their own. And as we see a decline in the summer, maybe 1 ship a week, which will be next summer. I think there's some weeks you'll have 1 ship a week. How do you depreciate your investment in cars, and more importantly, in people? There are people who are working for some of these operators for years. They have a steady job. They get a salary. Some of them are in the tipping pool of that business. And these businesses will suffer over time. They will suffer gradually. So
I just want to make one quick back check. And again, we do have an excellent resource for information, particularly as it relates to the ports. There's a website, caymanport.com, that provides a schedule every month for the number of cruise calls to the Cayman Islands. And for today, they were, in fact, 2 ships, Carnival Liberty and Carnival Sunrise, for a total of 9,334 passengers. Was there a third one?
There was a Holland America ship as well today.
Holland America. I see Carnival Liberty, Oosterdam. Oosterdam, that's Holland America? Okay, fair enough. So, 3 ships, total 9,334 passengers.
All the 3?
All the 3.
So
yeah.
I was
close enough.
Number.
Close enough. The other ones are obviously the cargo ships, which we don't count passengers. That's just all crew.
Yeah.
But just, again, for the CPR person out there sharpening their pencil going, see, they're lying again. No, well, we're not lying. It's just
correction. Thank you for
correction. You're very welcome.
Yeah. So continuing along that line, I personally take the position that I think the case is just about made that if you're going to have the constant decline in ships as a result of the size, IMO, and understanding the impact that you're going to have on the cruise businesses that are operating on the island. And I will add that as chairman of the Turtle Center, I can tell you that approximately almost 60% of our business is coming from cruise. And looking at that business, to put things lightly, there is no way that you're going to be able to be suffering significant declines and the business remain the same. You have to start to make changes. And all of these things will impact the attractions and, again, have a further impact on the customer experience from the persons on the cruise, as well as whether that exacerbates the issue of declines. So let us now start to transition. If we are now saying that story is not that great, then let's move to the point of what is the answer. The answer being proposed is piers. People have environmental concerns, so let us start, first of all, with the construction of piers. How is it, and we're proposing, as has been proposed in Cayman, I think back in 2019, that the piers would be built on pylons. Tell us how that process takes place and the environmental impact of that.
Yeah. So the technology that was discussed in 2019 is a technology that is currently used everywhere when you're building piers into the water. The way to build it, you're taking big piles that are, by the way, 72 to 84 inches in diameter, and they're being driven into the rock until they reach a certain resistance. Then you pour a cap on top of it.
So pause there. Sorry. When you say we're taking this, is this a metal cylinder?
Yeah, it's a metal cylinder, which is 95 feet high and 84 or 72 inches wide. They weigh many, many tons, and they operate from a crane, from a barge, and they're put into the floor of the ocean, and you start slowly with a hammer, hammering them in as deep as necessary until they get resistance.
Like to the bedrock sort of thing.
To the bedrock. And then you drive another one and another one. Every 4 creating a band, and then you make another 4 and another 4. And then on top of each 4, you pour a base of a band, and then on top of it, we're putting the pier itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a technology. That technology, properly designed and executed, can take hurricanes 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they're being used throughout the Caribbean. I've built 6 of those types of piling piers in the Caribbean in the last 20 years. And that's a technology. The magic here is the engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Work itself, there are 2 American companies who know how to do it, to drive these piles. Most of the work, by the way, can be done by local contractor. Just driving the piles itself is a special technology. The engineering is a special technology. And that's it. So it's very simple to do. It sounds complicated, but it moves very fast. So a pier like this, from the minute you start that element until you can take a ship, is about 16 to 18 months.
Okay.
It can actually go faster. The problem is you need every piece of concrete to cure for 28 days before you continue. And that's why it takes a little longer than...
So I'll supplement that with asking some questions of concerns that persons may have as it relates to the environment. So based on your experience in putting these pylons into the ground until they pretty much hit bedrock, you pour the concrete, you're tying them together, you've made it. Does it allow for the flow of water? Does it allow, arguably, for the flow of sand? What have you found in your experience in other islands, particularly in relation to coral growth? Answer those questions for me.
So these piles that are in the ground, after a while, suddenly they become shelter. You have little growth of coral starting. If you go on the Puerto Maya that was done in 2008, and I went diving there about 2 months ago, there's almost a little reef underneath that just spurs out. It's a great area. The water there is crystal clear and beautiful. There is no reason why it won't develop as a new created reef. There is no emission of any type from the ships. Ships have zero emission within 18 miles of coastline. So it is nothing. Even in the case of Cozumel, the pier is maybe 50 feet, 100 feet from the national park, an underwater national park that was discovered by, Jacques Cousteau in the 60s, and it's in its glory and beauty just 100 feet from where the ships are.
Yeah.
So these piles themselves, once you drive them in, they don't make any dirt or dust or anything. You just drive them in, and it's a very clean type of an operation.
And have your experience in the Caribbean found that, again, flow of sand, flow of water, there's no impediments there?
So I think the issue of sun migration, which is a big concern when you have beaches like sandy beaches, whether in Grand Turk or in the Bahamas, these piling, they don't stop the sand migration or the water migration. And you can see it years later in Grand Turk. We finished the pier in 2004. Now it's 2025. And the beach is there as it was the first day. So the beach is not impacted at all.
Yeah. Now, we also, when I say we, ACT, paid to get someone to actually go over there and use the GPS to track where the proposal was initially for our piers. And I can say, embarrassingly, at 55, I never dove out there to do it myself. But what came back to us was the fact that it was pretty much a moonscape. And I say that because there shouldn't be that much concern about specifically damaging a pristine coral there. The pristine coral here in Cayman is pretty much to the southwest as well as to the northeast. But nevertheless, one thing that would be of concern would be the movement of silt. So when you go that you're driving the piles, there's a whole issue of silt. What is done in order to ensure that that doesn't happen?
There is no silt. There is no silt.
Okay.
Silt in the water can happen when there is a dredging project. Can be. Depends on the material. There can be some silt. But during the driving of the pile, there is no silt.
Really?
No, there is no.
Absolutely none.
Well, absolutely. Austin is fact-checking me.
Yeah.
There may be a little bit.
A little bit. Okay.
There are no absolutes in engineering.
Correct. But really, I've been there. I was in the water when these piles are being driven. Driving does not create silt.
I would infer, I've seen when they do some of this dredging, like I won't even call a specific project, but they put up these little silk meshes or something. Is that still used as a precautionary measure?
So they do it when you dredge, or when the material is very soft on the bottom, you will do so.
Okay.
But it's mainly when you dredge, and you do the silk around it when the workers are working on the top and they're dropping things into the water, or there is something like this, but not from the pile drive. So the pile driving, no.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with our port, but I think another concern that persons would have is, are you able to go ahead and construct one of these piers and at the same time Cayman Islands be able to facilitate the one or two cruise ships that are coming?
You will be able to operate the same way you're operating today. So from the day the pier starts until it's finished, there's no interruption with the operation of the tenders. Maybe the tenders will have to come here and not there,
right.
But you know it a year in advance, so you make the arrangement where the tenders will go. There should be no interruption of the work and the operation of the current operation while you build this facility.
Totally awesome. And then you say from a hurricane perspective, all the way up to Category 5.
Yeah. Of course, there's always, Austin is fact-checking me.
Yeah. No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
We have Hurricane 1, which Hurricane 1 goes all the way to 2. Hurricane 2 goes to 3.
Right.
3 goes to 4. And where does 5 go to?
Yeah.
There is no limit to Hurricane 5. And engineers are always talking about what will happen with a very, very bad storm.
Yeah.
So you can specify from an engineering perspective a pier for Hurricane 4, but you can't do it for 5. 4 has a limit, which is 5. So what do? So the way I came about the idea is to just take the design of 4 and multiply it. So I'm adding an exponential margin of error of a possibility. I've seen one not great built pier, I did not build it, in Mexico that was destroyed by Hurricane 3. So it's not only in the numbers, but the duration of the hurricane and things like that. But I think the engineering that was done in 2019 and also prior engineering that was done for this project here, which I've seen, has taken into consideration the historical weather, because we have here very good historical weather records going back almost 100 years, both at sea and the wind. And we believe that at that time, we are in good place there. We have to understand that a pier like this will be funded by a financial institution, by cruise line, by government, God knows who. Everyone who will put these amount of money into the ground will want to have assurances
that it's going to stay there.
That's going to stay there. And the assurances will be by obtaining insurance. And you cannot get insurance when not somebody qualified, acceptable to the insurance company, will certify the specification of the pier.
Yeah, and one of the advantages that we do have here is the fact of where it is being built is not necessarily the sort of hurricane direction. I mean, things tend to come more from the southeast side here in Cayman, not necessarily on the leeward side.
That is correct, but I'll be hard-pressed to say that there will never be a damage to a catastrophic hurricane.
Sure, of course.
But I would say that all the hurricanes that we have seen in this part of the world in the last 30, 40, 50 years, not one of them will come close to causing damage to the standard that is considered for this location.
Yeah.
There will be elements that may fly away. Fenders that, Yokohama fenders are connected with cables to the pier. They may fly away.
Yeah.
But so you just put them back.
But the pier won't go anywhere.
Pier will not go anywhere.
There's no structure that man's building that's not going to be subjected to the elements, whether it be earthquakes or hurricane. But surely you're saying that you feel comfortable that both in terms of where it's going to be constructed and the level of integrity of the construction, that we can definitely say it should be built to 1, 2, 3, 4 sort of standards.
As my colleague mentioned, the pundits would say that the environmental damage caused by pier construction would be catastrophic. You, of course, have debunked that, having built or designed and built cruise piers. They go on to state that reefs are not only a natural wonder, but an economic lifeline, drawing divers, snorkelers, nature lovers from around the world, and are a benchmark to the overall greater tourism product. What has been said many times about modern cruise pier construction is that these cruise piers will not take away from the environment, but quite to the contrary, will give back to the environment by they themselves forming marine ecosystems. Would you agree with this statement?
I would agree. Yes. Full stop, new paragraph. If a construction of the pier involves dredging, substantial dredging, there may be some impact because of the dredging, but not the building of the pier.
Okay.
The question is, will there any dredging be needed here, and to what extent? So that's a question. But the pier, again, driving the piling, building the pier, no damage, if at all.
Well, having been involved in at least the last most comprehensive cruise proposal, the piers that have been proposed for the Cayman Islands in the past have been deep water piers. So they're already in deep water, no need to dredge in order to support the keel or draft of boats. So the argument is dredging, if any, would be significantly less.
Yeah.
But I saw you adjust in your chair, so that suggests that you have your doubts.
No, you're correct in what you're saying.
Okay.
The issue is that we can just make the pier a little bit longer so it's in deeper water and will not require any dredging at all.
Right.
However, if the distance from middle of the ship to where the people have to board transportation, land or water transportation, is more than 350, 400 meters, we're getting into a problem because people won't walk much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen other ports that try to have a longer pier, and people were balking at walking. And because it's not that these people cannot walk, but they are with flip-flops and they're with children and they have towels with them. So we have developed a standard of about 400 meters or 350 meters. So it's theoretically possible to build it without any dredging, but it may as well. And we have to go into the detail, which we won't do today,
right,
to see whether we have to bring them a little bit further. But I must say the area where we have to, quote unquote, bring them in further is an area that somebody called the moonscape, because of years and years of maritime operation of cargo ships and cruise ships and anchors and things like the builders, by the government, to ensure to minimize to the absolute minimum, if at all, any damage to the environment.
Well, thank you very much for that. We are chatting with global cruise expert, Mr. Giora Israel, as our guest in studios. The phone lines remain open. 745-2626 is the number. Or, of course, you can WhatsApp us at 928-2562. From there, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. Got a very quick text message on WhatsApp just moments ago. Says, I'm listening to your show about the piers. Very interesting show. Thank you for hosting this guest. It's that simple. Pick up the phone or pick up your phone. Ask us a question. There'll be more still to come on Straight Talk.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
Hey man, could it be you? Tortuga's 10K giveaway is back, and someone's walking away with $10,000 in cash. Every time you spend $25 at Tortuga Fine Wine and Spirits or discount liquors in-store or online at tortuga.ky, you get a shot at winning big. As well as $10,000 in cash, we've got thousands in giveaways to hand out every week. Think staycations, the latest iPhones, exclusive experiences, and more. Get in to win. Visit tortuga.ky for the full terms and conditions.
When it comes to cooking for my family, I turn to Kirk Market for all our nutritional needs. Whether whipping up a quick stir fry with lean CAB choice beef or preparing a healthy weekend dinner with fresh local snapper, Kirk Market always has exactly what I need. At Kirk Market, I find premium proteins that keep my family healthy, energetic, and always coming back for seconds. Visit Kirk Market today. Bring home the quality and freshness your family deserves. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and experience a world of choice.
Drinking water is vital to our health. At Cayman Water, we use reverse osmosis desalination to ensure safe drinking water. A semi-permeable membrane allows fresh water to pass through, blocking out contaminants. Then, we finish with a post-treatment process and conduct frequent extensive testing to ensure that you get healthy drinking water with an average pH of 7. Not only is water out of your tap safe to drink, it's approximately 400 times less expensive than bottled water. Help to reduce plastics and save our planet. Cayman Water cares. Learn more at caymanwater.com.
With you in mind, we have your style. Find what you need down every aisle. You want saving, selection, and quality. That's why we're your home store. Home store. The way to make a home. The way to make a home.
It's trivia every Wednesday from 7 o'clock at Sandbar. Fantastic prizes in our free-to-enter Trivia Madness. Great offers on beer buckets. Oh, yeah. Margaritas and a delicious menu served throughout the evening. Grab your pals and get along to Sandbar every Wednesday from 7 o'clock for the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Are we ready?
Yes, Marty!
Then let's do this. Trivia, Sandbar, 7 o'clock, Wednesday. See you there.
Hello, pet parents. We're Cayman Vets, Cayman's most advanced veterinary clinic providing quality care and services. We are committed to being your pet's advocate and friend, offering a lifetime of care. From vaccinations and wellness checks to more advanced surgical procedures, complicated medical concerns, and emergency care on demand. For more information about us or to get in touch, please visit kmanvets.com. K-Man Vets, where compassion meets excellence.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM as we continue our excellent discussion this evening with global cruise tourism expert, Mr. Giora Israel. The phone lines are open at 745-2626, or you can WhatsApp us at 928-2562. And from there, certainly you can either leave us a traditional WhatsApp text message or send us a WhatsApp audio note. We do have a number of questions coming in from the listening audience, but Ellio, you wanted to take us somewhere first?
Just one quick one, and that would be, we talk about the construction of the piers. One of the concerns, or at least perhaps two concerns that persons would have in relation to the piers is, can our government afford that? There's been so much spending. Auditor General making statements that, the government squandered money. Again, whether that's true or not, people are concerned the government doesn't have money to do it. So how would that financing be able to take place? And I know we're not necessarily there at this point, but how will that be able to take place? And do you see a scenario where this government or any government is going to give up ownership of the port in order to get the piers financed?
Let me start with ownership. There's no question that the people, the government, the sovereign should own this port, full stop. Mm-hmm. There's no question about it. That's the right thing to do. You're an island. This is the entry to your country, and you want to own it. What can be structured is for government. I don't think the government has the money, and even if it has the money, it should necessarily take the risk of building this project on its own. I wouldn't recommend it if I would be an independent advisor. So one of the ways to do is to work with the cruise lines and see if they're willing to contribute, and to see how much. Will they contribute 50% of the cost, or will they contribute less or more? That's one option. But there is also another option for the government to interact with large investment enterprises, and some of them are well known around the world, like BlackRock or Blackstone or companies like that. There's a company like Icon, a British company, that are now developing large infrastructure. They have a long horizon of 20, 30 years, and they can either put some of their capital in or get some commitment to the cruise lines to them to support their investment and create a public-private partnership. When I say private, it's always owned by government. That's very important. Mm-hmm. And there is an agreement between these private enterprise, how they bring the money, how they recover the money back, how they operate it according to certain standards set by government, while working with the cruise line. To get the cruise line hooked into this transaction is very important, because it guarantees that they keep on coming.
Now, you have designed and built these cruise piers, and I wonder, no fact-checking necessary, but a question, in your estimation, what would it potentially cost this country for the development of, say, a single or double finger pier? Ballpark.
I've built a pier like this to take two big ships in Grand Turk in 2005 for $12 million. I'll never build one anything close to this. The pier is 80% of the cost of the pier is the steel. Mm-hmm. This is very, very, very expensive. These are tens of thousands of tons of steel, highly specialized steel that in the U.S. is made only by one factory in Louisiana. So it's really a commodity. It's concrete and steel, and these prices have shot up. So I think what I built in Grand Turk for $12 million probably will cost today 60, 70 million, maybe.
Wow. Okay. And with, of course, the Trumponomics tariffs, that could get even higher.
Well, yes. But, prices go up and down. There are opportunity costs and things like that. But
he's a fan of Trump.
I cannot give you a precise amount of money that this will cost. How much will be done on land? Will there dredging involved or not? How long will be the pier? So I don't want to guess.
Well, let me ask you another question. What would you, again, guesstimate that the cruise lines, if they are involved in the building and financing of this project, what would or could they want in return other than simple repayment of the debt?
Well, the repayment of the debt is possible only if they come to the port. So the transactions like this that has happened in many places around the world by Carnival and other cruise companies is a special two-way transaction. We will provide the port or whoever develops the port a certain guarantee of certain amount of people or calls over a period of 5 or 10 years. And let's say the cruise line will pay a $10 fee per person, and the cruise line will retain $5 to get its money back.
Right.
And the other $5, let's say, go to the port. The only way for Carnival or Royal Caribbean or NCL to get its money back is to keep on coming.
Right.
So, however, to allow Carnival or MSC to come, you need to give them the one asset that they want to get from you, and that is a certain preference in using the facility. So company A will say, I will give a certain financial commitment that can be translated into bank loans or investment by private enterprise. And in return, I will get one berth for 7 days a week to use my ships. They will not seek exclusivity because you won't give it to them. But you say you can book in advance the next 2 years what you need, and the rest of the inventory belongs to the bank of free berth that can be given to the other cruise line.
Okay.
So there is never an exclusivity. There will be a preference. And you can give a preference to more than one cruise company. So you can attract 2 or 3 companies.
All right.
I think we could move in, Mr. Harris, we can move in a little bit to start to answer some of the questions being asked by the public. I have one here, and I know you have several of those as well.
Please.
I think I know where this one is going, but this says, do you think that building the piers in Grand Cayman will increase passenger numbers from pre-COVID numbers, or is it just a matter of retaining the numbers?
Well, let's look at a 6,000 passenger ship. If that ship will come 52 times a year, so 50 times 6 is 360,000 passenger, one ship once a week. So you do the math.
Indeed.
Yeah, and I to give an answer that I perhaps believe, if I may infer where this particular question is going, again, I want to stress that the numbers of persons, irrespective of whether we have a pier or not, the number of persons coming to the Cayman Islands via cruise is something that the government, that means the royal we, the people of this country, will decide. If we want to cap it at 5,000, you can cap it at 5,000. You can cap it pretty much at whatever you want. The cruise ships will listen. One of the things I remember you telling us in one of our other discussions is we even had Caribbean countries saying no ships on Sundays. So those sort of options is something that is for us. Mr. Harris, I know you had some other questions.
Yeah, no, I think there are 2 really fundamental questions coming from the listening audience. The first one deals with construction methodology. It says, good afternoon. Please ask your guest to share his thoughts on Cayman using a floating pier at, say, Spots and another at Northwest Point, leaving the Georgetown port open for cargo and ships that tender.
Well, there is only one technology of floating piers that was developed in Norway about a decade ago, and it was developed for calm water in the fjords. And they have one of those in the Caribbean in Port Royal next to Kingston.
And that's a protected harbor.
It's a protected harbor. But not only that, it really does not cater to big ships. It caters to small ships. So these floating docks have so far worked either inside the fjords where there's no movement of water, and also to smaller ships. The one in Kingston is really working only for very small ships. So the technology today to have a floating dock like this is just not there. Now, if you will build if the technology for the smaller pier will be expanded for bigger ships, the question will be, what do you do with bad weather? Because if you don't have a way to lift this floating pier out of the water, it will be shredded after one storm.
Right. As you said earlier on, unlike the piling piers, which aren't going to go anywhere, the floating piers will.
Yeah, the floating pier will be just in shreds. It will disappear because it can weigh 100, 200,000 tons of steel. How do you take it out of the water in hurricane warning where everybody is boarding their houses?
Bottom line is, if you can't lift it out, Mother Nature will. That one can't work.
Mother Nature will trash it.
Yes, indeed. Another question says, I heard your guest say that attractions for cruise passengers are important. Does he think Cayman is lacking in attractions? And if so, would you be willing to share what sort of attractions, in your opinion and experience, do cruise passengers like?
Thank you for that question. It's a very important question.
Great question.
Yeah. What we have seen over the last 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when people arrived at Nassau and St. Thomas or in Grand Cayman, we actually took them in minibuses or buses. This is the church. This is the city hall. This is, this is the Parliament building. People were exploring people were tourists. But what has happened in the last 25 years, many of the people that come as tourists, not only on ships, are people that are not really working. Mm-hmm. They're lawyers or bankers or white-collar people.
Yes.
And what they want on vacation is to be active. Mm. And a little company in Jamaica called Chaka Caribbean, Melville family, great Jamaican family who had horses playing with polo. Mm. They started putting tourists on horses, and it became a big attraction. They ultimately should take the credit and get the credit of developing what we call soft adventures. Our people want water and soft adventures. For example, they want to go on boogie rides. Mm-hmm. And then Chaka realized that if you do some places where there's a lot of mud and they have to go quickly through the mud with the boogie ride and they get completely full with mud in their face, they're happy like puppies.
Okay.
So what the passengers want, what people today want, white-collar people, when they go out on vacation, they want to have adventure.
Right.
But I'm calling it soft adventure. They're really not climbing, the Everest.
Right.
They want to have what we call soft adventures. So we have some great attraction here. Obviously, Stingray City is well known around the world. The national dish of
Turtle
course,
Center,
yeah.
Turtle Center is very special and unique.
But apparently we should add throwing mud in your face.
Yeah, so mud in my face, I'll be happier.
Yeah.
They really take the Instagram pictures when they get off these boogies, and they're so happy when they're so full with dirt, and that's what they show to their families when they go back.
Right.
So I think more attractions that allow the people to be interactively involved in physical experiences is what will be very welcome.
Does that include things like the zip lines, etc.?
Yeah, but the first one that has a zip line, it was very attractive. The zip lines are still great attractions. And when I worked at Carnival, we actually were involved to create some of these attractions as well by funding private enterprise to create unique attractions in the destination, like Mystic Mountain in Ocho Rios, which is a great success. So a destination needs to reinvent itself. When we go into Disney, when we go to Orlando, what Walt Disney said 60 years ago, he wanted to have a new attraction or a new part of an attraction every second year.
Right.
So that every time you come to Orlando, you discover new things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yes, we like the old things. We like the things we know and feel comfortable with in a destination. But if a place like Grand Cayman, and you have a lot of land where you can develop these things, will have new things. Why can't we have new marquee value attraction? Why can't we have other things? And the best thing is to see what's happening in the Caribbean, what are the most successful tours that are being sold in any other destination, and, take a variation of those and create something uniquely Caymanian.
Speaking of most successful, another listener says, could you ask your guest about the best pier in the Caribbean, the one that was developed in Curacao, that was a piled pier built 100 feet from shore, some 50 feet in the ocean, parallel to the shoreline with little to no dredging. Would such a pier work in the Cayman Islands at the present location, in your opinion?
So I'm very familiar with the Curacao pier, so your listener is on the money. He knows the pier.
Excellent.
I was involved in helping the government of Curacao to develop the concept, so it's a great, but they had a long piece of land. Nothing was developed on the land. It was not blocking anything. If we are here to have, think about it, just one ship, which is, 70 meters tall, 350 meters long, where will she be? She will block the view to the ocean. Mm-hmm. She will take a huge space in front. So it's a great idea to develop it if you can.
Right.
If you can. I built a similar one like this in Roatan because it was possible, because it was virgin land and there was nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the fact that we are in the middle of town and if you'll have, then you can take only one ship. Here we can, if we build pilings 2 piers into the water, the width of 4 large ships will be by far less than the length of one.
Yeah.
And so I'm not so sure it's practical, although it's a good idea in certain circumstances, but not here.
48 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. You made, I think, an important comment to us during the break that I'm going to ask you to make to the listening audience live on the air. Whilst the questions coming in from the listening audience in terms of, construction methodology, locations, attractions, whilst those questions are legitimate and important questions and certainly deserves dialogue, that is not the question that will be asked on April 30th. You agree?
Yes, sir.
And again, to clarify that, what the referendum question will be, taken directly from the bill, will be, should the Cayman Islands develop cruise berthing infrastructure? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then the conversations of the pecuniary details, the small fine print aspects of the design, the methodology, how big, how small, single pier, double pier, how deep, how far, environmental mitigation factors, all of those costs, all of those things will then start to happen. So these conversations that we're having now, arguably, we're going to go over the same ground again. Should there be a yes vote? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. The yes vote is only once the government is in place to start the process. And it may take many, many months and a lot of deliberation. A lot of experts were called in to provide opinions. And ultimately, hopefully, the government will take its time to make the right decision.
Yeah, and just to state the obvious, I mean, we nevertheless, that is the case, as my colleague has mentioned, and you have stated as well. But we have to go through this discussion because clearly our opposition, the opposition to the peers, is trying to use the lack of data, the lack of facts, the lack of specifics on the peer as another reason to not move forward with a yes vote.
Very good point.
So I wanted as well, I mean, the penultimate person who sent the text in relation to the attractions, again, I loved that question. I love I can sense the genuineness in that question. It was a total awesome question, and I think you give an equally great answer. Mr. Iris, how much time before we go to break, or do I have time to go ahead and start another line of questioning?
We do have one question as it relates to attractions that just came in. It says, speaking on attractions, if piers are built in Grand Cayman, can we better negotiate with the cruise line industry to allow Caymanian companies to make a better profit on excursions? In your opinion?
Yeah. So let's first understand that 35 years ago, when I had an attraction in St. Thomas, 98% of the people of the ship would buy a tour from the cruise line.
Mm-hmm.
That was the world. The world has changed. The world has changed because of 2 major reasons. Reason number one, people have traveled and they're a very experienced traveler. They may have been in a destination, maybe not this, they've been to another one. And people have now better ways to explore what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we are down from 98% of the people who will buy a tour from the cruise line to some ports where only 25% of the people will buy a tour from the cruise line. So it's important to understand that whereas the cruise line buying and purchasing tours from local operators and reselling them on a ship is only part of what people do in a port.
Mm-hmm.
We sometimes see 1,000 people getting off a ship and going on a tour, but the ship has 5,000 people. 4,000 people didn't buy a tour from the cruise line. They either do it on the internet. If you go today and put excursion, I'm coming on a ship to Grand Cayman, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And you will have 50 pages where you could buy your own tours.
Right.
It's important to make the distinction that the cruise line like to sell these tours. They make a profit out of these tours, but they're not exclusive anymore. And they're in many ports, less than 50%, 30% selling tours. The negotiation between the tour operator here, the receiving tour operator, and the cruise line is up to the two parties.
Mm-hmm.
If a tour operator believes that he should get $60 for the tour, he will get $60 for the tour if the cruise line wants to sell it.
Right.
So I don't think having a peer has to do anything with these negotiations between private enterprise and the cruise line.
Yes.
If he or she wants to sell a tour for 50 and the cruise line only want to pay them 40, don't take the tour.
Yeah. So to also quote my friend's favorite president, the art of the deal is what it all comes down to.
Indeed.
Ellio, you have 5 minutes remaining.
Sure, and again, I will say that, again, those things have to be addressed, unfortunately, because it is what the opposition is using, when they'll say, oh, Caymanians aren't making any money on these things. One of the things that was stated by the economist, Miss Marla Dukaran, when she came to the country was something in that vein. She talked about the fact that the cruise lines was making this $600 and something in terms of profit, and how the poor islands are only making $113. How do you respond to that?
Well, in this case, she said half truth. The half truth that she said gross profit. Gross profit is revenue less cost of goods, which is the travel agent commission, but not the operation of the company or operation of the ship. This $650 or so, I don't have the exact number, I checked it from the public release of Carnival Corporation for 2024. Carnival profit, net profit for a 7-day cruise, for all the 7-day cruise, is $133, or 11.6% of its revenue. That's the average income per person on a 7-day cruise. These are the numbers. Nothing to do with 654 in any way or shape.
Typically, tell me, on this 7-day cruise, how many stops are we making?
Between 3 and 4.
So 3 and 4 stops, 7 days, all the cruise ships are making is approximately 137.
Well, I can only tell you what
is being published here.
Yeah. There are cruise lines that may make more or less.
Sure.
These numbers of 600 when, I don't know where they're coming from.
All right. Well, yeah. I'm in that camp as well. And again, even as I mentioned before, even if one was to infer that you're going to make the 600 plus, I think the islands still benefit when you consider all of the things that the cruise lines are providing. Time check, Mr. Harris.
We have 3 minutes left, and the WhatsApp audio question that's about 1:41 seconds long. Your call.
Got to start that.
All right, let's go to the listener.
Yeah, good evening, gentlemen. Interesting conversation. I like it. A lot of knowledge. Can the guest just answer one question to me? I don't know how familiar he is, but when bad weather and stuff comes in the waterfront there, how we all know how bad there gets in a bad nor'wester and thing. Based on his opinion, do he think I know he said that might have to be much dredging or anything going on there, but based on his opinion, do he think if you dredge down anymore, would that cause bigger waves and stuff to come into land. I know he said he talked about the dock there and stuff, the structure, the dock, the integrity, the structural integrity of the dock and everything. And I questioning that. I just was for find out because we got some other older buildings there and stuff. So based on his opinion, do he think would the water line? Because now we have water. We see what happened to the dock as it is. It was flooded couple of months ago in the bad weather last year sometime. And just based on his opinion, do he think if he do any dredging or any dredging go on there, do he think it gonna cause bigger waves when bad weather come? Bigger waves to beat up on the land.
So, yeah, I'm not sure if you understand.
I understood that.
You understood it? Great.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me say first that the pier is designed.
See, by the way, that's the Caribbean in him, you see. Totally understands the local colloquialism. Go ahead.
That was easy.
It was easy.
Well spoken.
Well straightforward.
Yes. The piers are very low. They're only 2 meters and 80 centimeters, which means on a major storm or even a Hurricane 3 storm at high tide, the pier will be underwater. That's okay. That's one answer. But he asked specifically about the dredging.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't need to create a dredge basin here. We will have to do a little bit cosmetic on one little part. So the little cosmetics, just that we can bring the ship a little further in. So the majority of where the pier is and the majority of the area where the ship's berth above it will not be touched.
Thank you for that response. We do have to pause and go off to the BBC News, but more questions, more answers still to come as Straight Talk continues on Bobo 103.1 FM.
Bobo.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Neil Nunes with the BBC News. Donald Trump has defended the tariffs he's imposed on U.S. imports from around the world, despite a global stock market sell-off. Wall Street has suffered its worst day since the early months of the COVID pandemic. The Dow Jones fell by nearly 4%. Michelle Fleury has more from New York.
U.S. stocks suffered their biggest one-day loss since 2020, and the dollar tumbled. The combination of a blanket 10% tariff on all imports to the States and higher levies for many countries has sparked fears that an escalating trade war could trigger a recession. Among the biggest losers are the companies investors think are most exposed to this new world order of trade. The sportswear giant Nike has seen its business model shattered at a stroke of the president's pen. Trainers that are made in Vietnam will now be subject to a 46% tariff.
The World Trade Organization has revised its forecast for global economic growth sharply downwards in the light of the new U.S. tariffs. In contrast to its previous forecast of 3% growth for the world economy this year, the agency now expects a contraction of 1%. Lesotho says it'll send a government delegation to the United States to plead its case after Washington imposed 50% tariffs on its imports. Thousands of people in Lesotho are employed making clothes for the U.S. market under a tax-free initiative set up to help countries come out of poverty. Tebo Kobeli is a textile company owner there.
This has been a devastating day for us. We have been going up and down, meeting different stakeholders. We met up with government officials, government ministers to discuss a way forward. And the government confirmed a great support in textile. Also, they are looking into meeting up with the American government. They are with us. We must continue production.
Gaza's Hamas-run civil defense agency says an Israeli airstrike on a school sheltering displaced people east of Gaza City has killed at least 31 people. Israel says it had targeted a Hamas command center. Gaza's health ministry says around 100 people have been killed in Israeli strikes over the last day. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, told the Security Council the Israeli actions had violated international law.
The Israeli military continues to strike camps for people who have been displaced numerous times, who have nowhere safe to go. The Israeli military also continues to force civilians to move. Half of Gaza is now under mandatory evacuation orders or has been declared a no-go zone. These orders fail to comply with the requirements of international humanitarian law.
BBC News. The Pentagon says it'll investigate the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over his use of a messaging app to discuss airstrikes on Yemen. Last week, it emerged a journalist was accidentally invited to the group on Signal. Senior officials, including the Vice President J.D. Vance, mentioned the timing of attacks against the Houthis as well as the missiles involved. Donald Trump's senior advisor on Africa says the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo has agreed on what he called a path forward to mining mineral reserves. Massad Boulos spoke after talks with President Felix Tshisekedi in Kinshasa. Mr. Tshisekedi believes U.S. involvement in extracting minerals could help quell the violence that's plagued the country for nearly 30 years. Iranian media say a former senior judge who had been involved in the execution of thousands of political prisoners has died after a long illness. Hossein Ali Nayeri was head of the so-called Death Committee that oversaw the mass executions in 1988. An indigenous rights group has warned that social media influencers pose a new threat to uncontacted tribes. It follows the arrest of an American tourist who had traveled to a prohibited Indian Ocean island in an apparent attempt to contact the Sentinelese people. Jessica McAllen has this story.
Survival International described Mikhailo Viktorovic's behavior as reckless and idiotic. Not only did he endanger his own life, the charity said, but also the lives of the Sentinelese. Like many uncontacted tribes, they have no immunity to common diseases like flu or measles and could be completely wiped out by them. The 24-year-old reportedly filmed his visit and left a can of Coca-Cola on the shore as an offering to the tribe, but doesn't seem to have made any contact with them.
BBC World News.
Views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, as we move into the final segment here on Straight Talk on Bobo 103.1 FM with your hosts, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. And of course, our expert guest in studios, Mr. Giora Israel, answering every question you ever wanted to know but may have been afraid to ask. The phone lines remain open for the remaining 21 minutes before we wrap it up. The phone lines are open at 745-2626, or you can share your comments via our WhatsApp line, 928-2562. Comments coming from the listening audience. Enjoying the show, fellas. Keep it up. You're very welcome, and thank you all for tuning in on this beautiful Thursday evening. Got another question from the listening audience. Mr. Israel, this morning I listened to the press conference, and you said that cruising on the mega ships is a generational industry. For me, this means that my grandmother, my mother, me, and my children will all cruise together. This makes me believe that these ships are so big because the cruise lines want to keep the passengers on board, keeping all of the money in-house. Caymanians also share this worry that the cruise lines are less concerned with the destination, more about keeping them on the ship, peers or no peers, and keeping all of that money for themselves. Help us understand this concept. Is this a legitimate concern, or like much of the criticism on the other side, is it largely smoke and mirrors?
So, just to explain the multi-generational travel, this is 50% of the cruise business today. And these are families of 6, 16, 60, 600 big families. And this is just something that happened regardless of the size of the ship. By the way, Holland America has multi-generational, smaller ships have multi-generational. It's just a pattern that consumers have realized, that being with a big family on the cruise ships, at least the grandfather like me with my daughter and my grandkids, I'd like to pay for them to come on a cruise with me because we are together every night at dinner. Nobody can escape.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take people to other resorts, the children and the grandchildren, they all disappear. So they realize that in the evening, when the ship is sailing, everybody is together.
Right.
So it's important to know that. That has nothing to do necessarily with the size of the ship. It's a pattern that is happening on small ships and bigger ships. As to the people staying on the ship, there are things that have happened over the decades, over the last 20, 30 years, where people love to go on cruises. We have people who went 60 times on cruises, 80 times. The people who have been 35 times just in the port of Nassau. So some people just don't get off the ship.
Mm-hmm.
People will do a big excursion in Port A and will not get off the ship in Port B. So not in every port all the people getting off. But there will be no cruising without destinations. The cruise lines need destination. They need a good blend of destination. Jamaica, Grand Cayman, Mexico. These three ports are creating an amazing balance. You know, Mexico is different culture, different geography, Mayan. You have Grand Cayman and the turtles and the stingrays. and you have Jamaica with everything that Jamaica means, yeah, man, and Bob Marley and the company. So we're creating a blend of tastes and things, and we need the destination. The tourists want those destinations.
I almost thought you were gonna give us a Jamaican accent there, Giora.
Well, not quite.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. So a nice blend of diversity. At the end of the day, you need that, right? Yeah. And there are some persons who are saying, I'm excited to get off on the 5th largest financial industry in the world, Cayman Islands, and might not want to get off somewhere else.
Yeah, and look, the ships have a lot to offer to the people, and we have people who don't get off the ship.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that when you have very attractive ports and very attractive opportunities and exciting things to do, the people get off the ship.
Right.
So when we have ships in certain port that there's a lot of action, a lot of things going on, they're getting off the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in Nassau, nothing wrong with Nassau because it's, for Nassau, 3-day cruises is going on for multiple ports for decades. So I've been on ships to Nassau at least 20, 25 times myself. On Friday afternoon, we get the boys and we go on a ship, we have a good time, playing a little bit in the casino. We may get off the ship in Nassau, walk around Bay Street a little bit, then we go back on. Maybe next time we go to Paradise Island. So, you know, we can't say that this is happening because of that. Remember also that when we're in port, the shops are closed, the casinos are closed, and so on. And because this is the law of the land, that once we enter territorial water of Cayman Islands, we close the casinos, we close the retail, and so on. So, yes, but people can stay, you know.
You gave us a tidbit of information this afternoon, which I found totally interesting. You talked about the McDonald family, and of course, share that story. I don't want to take it from you. I mean, it was just total awesome to hear that story.
The ultimate multi-generational travel belongs really to the McDonald family.
The food chain?
No.
Okay.
The real McDonald family, the clan, the Scottish clan.
Ah, okay.
There are about 18,000 members of that grand, amazing family who live in North America.
Okay.
They have a corporation, they have an organization. It's really like corporate America, the McDonald's.
Okay.
And they charter a whole ship for a family. Every second year, they take a ship of 4,000 people and go on a ship as the McDonald family.
Really?
So this is the ultimate.
Amazing.
Give us a year straight talk, buddy.
That's what I was going to say, Austin. It'll be you, I, and a couple of hundred friends.
A couple of hundred of our closest and dearest friends.
By the way, you're doing pretty well in your program here.
Thank you.
And I think you should do what some podcasters now doing. They're chartering whole ships with their podcast.
I think it's a lovely idea. Let's get together and work out the kinks and make it a reality.
You can have a full ship with your supporters. If I would be living here and listening to you every day, I would love to be with you on a ship.
All right. I love how you think. You might just very well be my new favorite person. Just could be. Could be. We have 15 minutes remaining. And there's one question that I think has to be asked. We talked about, we repeated what the referendum question is. People have asked or stated the question is vague, the question is incomplete, the question should change. Bottom line, the question is not going to change. It's part of the law. It is the timeline that we have been given. The question asks, again, for the avoidance of doubt, should the Cayman Islands develop cruise berthing infrastructure? Cruise berthing infrastructure, if it's not plain enough, means piers. Bottom line. That's what the government ministers have been saying, both past and present. That is what those who are obviously supporting the initiative are saying. Cruise berthing infrastructure means piers. If the answer should come back on referendum day that it is a no, the country does not want to move forward with cruise berthing infrastructure, what, in your opinion, will that mean for the cruise tourism industry in the Cayman Islands?
If the answer comes as no, a slow process will start, which will lead to a slow, consistent decline in the cruise business to the Cayman Islands. I'm sorry to say that. It may take 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but based on the ships are on order, which are those ships, who owns those ships, it is inevitable that that's going to happen, unfortunately.
All right.
Slow, painful death.
Slow, painful death. And again, the cruise lines have been warning about this for, I would dare say the better part of a decade. We thought, they couldn't be serious. It's just fodder for those, interest in building a pier. But we see the numbers bearing this statement out to be true. The fact-based numbers, the evidence. And now a global expert telling you maybe what you don't want to hear, but it is also the truth. What do you say? They don't have to defend the truth. The truth stands on its own merit. Yeah. In the absence of cruise berthing infrastructure, a.k.a. piers, those persons who derive a living from the cruise industry will be no more. They're going to have to look for a new job.
The writing is on the wall.
Yeah,
you've been weighed and found wanting.
Look, it could be that you'll have in the winter some calls, so it doesn't go to zero,
right?
But it breaks. It will not allow the industry as we know it, retail, F&B, excursion, to survive. They cannot survive on one call a week or maybe 3 months with no call in the summer. So, unfortunately.
Well, I have to say that I'm sure that my colleague wants to give you his own proper send-off, seeing as how both of you have become,
best buds,
two best friends.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Mr. Guerra, for coming here into the studio and and sharing the information. And I know you've had a bit of an exciting day. You must be very tired. And so I would like to say that on behalf of Straight Talk. And I think I can also say that publicly on behalf of ACT as well. Thank you for coming and sharing this information. Again, you stressed this morning, as my colleague was reiterating a little while ago, that no one paid you to come here to do this. We really appreciate you taking all the time out to share the information that you have. And hopefully you'll be, and I know you've been visiting us in the past, but hopefully you'll be visiting us some more and maybe giving us some enlightenment on that podcast thing so that we can make that happen too.
Absolutely. And I just want to simply append to that on behalf of the listening audience, those persons who've been clearly writing in, asking questions, making statements. Thank you on their behalf for, I would absolutely say without fear of contradiction, a very informative, very enlightening conversation on the facts surrounding cruise tourism, cruise pier development, and certainly the future without that infrastructure. But thank you so much. An opportunity for some closing and final remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a special place for Grand Cayman in my heart. I'm not from here. I didn't live here. But my history goes back to 1987, where I published the first dive guide for Grand Cayman. I published it. It was published and was very successful. It's out of print for many years because it was a little bit outdated. The photography was not great. But at that time, it was the first dive guide. And so I learned to know the people of the Cayman Islands, the country, the offering that it has. And so when I read yet again about that question, I just felt I needed to be here and share my thoughts. And I wish all the people of Grand Cayman and the Cayman Islands good luck and continue to do the amazing job that you do, to have such a great place to live in, such a great place to welcome so many people on ship and by air. And God bless the Cayman Islands.
All right.
Well, God bless you as well. And again, one more comment from the listening audience. A very informative and high-level discussion today. Thank you so much to you and your guests. And certainly we couldn't be more grateful. Now, Ellio, the challenge is we have 9 minutes. That's a long time to go before we have to wrap it up. I don't know if we can keep pressing our good friend guest for 9 more minutes.
Oh, we don't have. We can just totally
kick him out.
Ignore him.
See you.
Like how he was ignoring me, Austin. You saw how he was ignoring me.
I did. I don't know how you took it.
He was cutting his eye at me.
He was.
The whole thing.
God, I thought you guys were friends, but clearly, there is such a thing as too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
He kind of spent the whole day with you today.
Yeah, I got it.
He's had enough.
Ellio is very passionate. Very passionate.
You
oh my
got
God,
that, did
he
you?
is. He
found that out.
Really has it in him. Yes.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you said that because I was tuned in the first part of the morning when you were on Radio Cayman. And this is a feather in your cap. I want to give you a compliment in front of the world.
Okay.
There were some questions that you could see notably were getting on your nerves, frankly. Some of the same questions, repetitive nature over and over. At one stage, and I'm going to paraphrase, I could tell without seeing you that you paused, took a deep breath, and said, I have to take my time with this. And what you were saying was, I have to maintain my composure because if you let me off my leash, people, I am going to go postal.
Oh, you
know
me.
Did a tremendous job this morning. You reminded me of my favorite orator, Barack Obama, who, throughout the debates, again in the Trump 1 version, not only did he smile his way through the rhetoric, but his tone never increased. He never shouted. I won't call him monotone, but certainly he stayed leveled and balanced and calm and relaxed all the way through it. I admire that because I don't have that bone. But you certainly demonstrated having it today, so I give you credit for that. Well, I admire that.
Gee, Austin, I can tell you, you've magically turned a very bad moment for me into something that sounds like I did something great.
You did something great.
I really appreciate it.
Fantastic.
No, I have, dealing with this can be sometimes a little bit vexing when you have, and I have faith, first of all, in the Caymanian people. I like to believe that the majority of them, as we had heard from Mr. Alan Chastany, are persons that want to get the facts, legitimately want, and that's why I complimented the genuine question, for example, on the attractions.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make evidence-based decisions. But unfortunately, we have in the room persons that I don't know why, but they're so animated against this, despite the facts staring you in your face. And I'm just disappointed to some extent in that vociferous minority, that here we are at what I consider to be a great country, a great people, and it befuddles me to say the least. It's like, why are we even having this discussion?
Yeah.
It is so basic. I remember going out from time I was a kid fishing with my uncle, right? In a little aluminum boat. I didn't want to swim in. I wanted to get onto a little dock when I came home. And by the way, when I worked in the tenders, we had to park it in South Sound, and we had to swim in.
Dock.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
We parked the boat out into the water.
The boat.
No, we parked the boat.
Moored the boat.
Moored, let's go with that word.
There you go.
Dropped an anchor somewhere and had to swim in. I don't know why that should be an experience that everybody wants anyone to endure.
Yeah.
This is like a common sense issue. And I just want to encourage all of our Caymanian people, let's continue to be the great country that we are and successes by making evidence-based decisions and not be swayed by a couple of, retirees that came here. As much as we're happy to have them, a couple of retirees that have come to this country, found some bushes, and that's really what they want. And at the end of the day, I can tell you, many of them, because I have chatted with them, by the way, I should stress, Mr. Harris, I didn't tell you, they blocked me from the South Sound chat.
Really?
Yeah, and only because I was giving a speech at the South Sound community, obviously they probably didn't speak in favor of what they wanted, but blocked. And
Not to worry, you'll live longer.
Oh no, but I mean, trust me, it's not stressing me. I'm just doing it in the spirit of transparency. Bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, we have to be making a decision, not for a small select few that perhaps just want to keep us with some trees and no industry at all. Nothing is supposed to change. No, we must make this decision based on what is good for the 3,000 plus families that are depending on it right now, as well as ourselves and for our children and for our grandchildren. You are not going to pull up a a tree that's been planted in this country for 40 years and not have significant impact. So when our friend here talks about a slow, painful death, I want you to understand, I am chairman of the Cayman Turtle Center. Modifications will have to be made there and in every single shop and store in this country, and you can't do it without having serious social and financial ramifications on the Cayman Islands and the Caymanian people. So please vote wisely.
Well, also to quote another guest this week, which was also proudly sponsored, brought to us, shared with us through the ACT group, was, of course, the former Prime Minister and now Leader of the Opposition of the island of St. Lucia, Mr. Alan Chastany. And to quote him directly, to your point, urging the voter who will participate in the referendum question, get the facts, make fact-based decisions, and remove from yourself the emotion of this conversation. Think with your head, not with your heart.
Yeah.
Don't believe the doomsdayers that suggest the world will come crumbling to an end. The world will come crumbling to an end if we fail to move forward. There is a cost for doing something, and there's a cost for doing nothing. And if you don't believe me, wait. It'll happen. You'll see it in your time.
Yeah.
26 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock. Only one other thing remains. Tomorrow's Friday, and, of course, it's the end of the week, the end of a long, grueling week. A lot of people either get off work early. Sometimes we wonder whether they're tuning into the program. But we are going to have fun tomorrow, at least for the first half hour.
We have fun every day.
We have fun every day, but we're going to have even more fun. And we're going to even throw in a little music in our otherwise all talk, all business, all the time tomorrow. Earlier this week, we obviously celebrated Caymanian innovation with Primitive Greens. Well, we are going to celebrate Caymanian accomplishment again tomorrow with our good friend Notch.
Bring it up a notch.
Bring it up a notch. That's right. For those of you who know Notch, of course, local performer, songwriter, producer extraordinaire. Well, he's coming out on April 7th with a brand new album, and we're going to get an exclusive first look, if not an exclusive first listen to some of the title track on that album, as well as some of the great songs that will be included on that album, not to mention the story behind that album. So we want to encourage the listening audience, if you are like me and like my fellow French Caribbean brother, you like the Caribbean, you like the reggae music, but you're going to love Straight Talk on Friday.
So if we're bringing, you know how I love singing, Austin.
You can sing.
That's what I was going to say. Make sure that I can sing.
I tell you, I keep telling people, wait till the Straight Talk Christmas album comes out. We're going to take that on our cruise.
Okay.
We're going to sail the world, spreading the message, spreading the gospel, and of course, you get to hear the Straight Talk
you have my sign off on Notch
album as well.
If I get to sing, you have my sign off on it. If not, it's not coming in.
You get to sing, buddy. You get to sing. I would not deny you that. Well, again, to the listening audience, that's all the time we have for this Thursday. It has been a fantastic week. It's been an informative week. As always, we hope you, the listening audience, enjoyed it, benefited from it, and again, maybe learned something in the process. As always, we want to thank all of our collaborators, all of our media partners, those persons that make Straight Talk happen each and every weekday from 4:30 to 6:30. This couldn't happen without you, and we give you a heartfelt thanks. That's all the time we have for you today, but reminding you to tune in one more time tomorrow at 4:30 right here for more Straight Talk on Bobo 103.1 FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world.